Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. Well, I hope you're ready for a deep dive into our topic for the week. Well, I'm not going to take up any of Victoria's time. I'll send it right on over to her. Victoria?
All right, guys, so you were promised some unblocking. Before I dive in, however, I must say that I am not a firm believer in the concept of writer's block. We all get stuck. We all hit roadblocks, things that we're not sure how are we going to maneuver a character around this thing, or how are we going to make these scenes work. Everybody experiences that. My opinion, however, is maybe among the unpopular, which is there's no such thing as writer's block. There is a such thing as either you haven't done enough research, you haven't done enough discovery, or you've let your story come apart in such a way that you can't see how to stitch it back together. Those are very solvable problems. You don't have to feel blocked. So let's dive into it. Today I'm going to give you 5 things which will get you started thinking about how to get yourself out of that state of stuckness. In the assessment, number 1 basically echoes what I just said. Do you have enough story information? There are specific things that you can look at to determine what kind of information you need for your story. The first and most obvious is character. Who are these people that are moving around that you're making things happen to and challenging in order to drive that narrative forward? Well, if you haven't done your proper character development and really thought through who they are, why they behave the way they do, what character traits might apply to them, you don't have a firm heading for your character. So I would say first and foremost, start looking at those finer points of your character. What came before, that's their backstory. What's happening to them now, which is in the present. And then what might happen in the future, which is more of a character arc question, but I'll come back to character arc in a second. So just take a look at those characters, those main characters, and see that you've developed them out far enough that they feel robust and like living people that you can move around the story. Second, have you identified your technical things? Are you certain about the genre that you're writing in? If part of your story feels like a fantasy and another part of your story feels like a mystery, and then maybe sometimes you throw in a little romance, it sounds to me like you're not certain about the genre that you're writing in. So really get clear, do your research about the components, the kinds of tropes, the kinds of story development that are used in the genre that you're interested in, and then true up those details. You'll never regret shaving off the extra things to really get to the heart of that story before you continue the fleshing out writing that you're going to do later. So if we're talking about the beginning, dial in those characters, dial in that genre. Once those things are done, sketch out a story model. This is something that I write about in my soon-to-be released book, Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers. When I talk about plot modeling, I discuss it in terms of being a systems thinker. So if you're looking at your story as a whole system, what parts need to be included? If this character does this, then that's going to lead to this, or it's going to lead to that. Once you start sketching out what those things look like, you can literally sketch out an entire timeline and see your whole story unfold. So maybe you need to do a little bit of that plot modeling and think through, if this happens here, what happens over there as a result, and what happened before, right? So you're starting to think about your sequence and your timeline using just a sketched out plot model of events. Finally, what about gathering your story components? This one can just be a full-on brainstormer. Sit down and dump onto a page every possible thing that could happen. What fascinates you? What interests you? How can you push these characters to the wall, as the author Richard Powers says? How can you really challenge them? How can you dig down deep in them and push them through that story? Go wild. Let yourself recall every crazy movie twist you ever saw, every great book you've ever read and why you loved it. Get all that stuff down on a page. Because from those little bits of story, those story components, you can start teasing out things that, if I put my own twist on this, that could be very interesting. And that's how you discover those story points. So I'm going to leave you there for today because I've dumped a lot on you. But if you're feeling the stuckness, review your characters, look at your genre, sketch out your story model, understand the components that you want to work with, go crazy and brainstorm out those story points, those plot points or challenges or conflicts, and then look at that thing as a whole, lay it all out in front of you, and see if you can't start teasing some threads to move that story forward. So I will leave you there with those finer points of assessment. And then next week, we're going to dig into how to take those things and turn them into a draft. So with that, I will throw it over to Kathleen for her map day.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. That's a great set of things to keep in mind. If I ever get stuck, I'm definitely going to look to that list, because it's so important to be able to keep going with your story and not walk away from it. Don't let it get cold, because that's when you start losing heart. If it seems hard right now, if you let it get cold, it's only going to seem harder. So punch your way through. And if you're looking for how to get your character moving again, consider coming on over to LiLLiPub, where we do practice writing sessions. You might be stuck on your main story, but you can come over to LiLLiPub in the Circle for Character Traits, where every week we're going to have a prompt on how to use our character trait of the month in a writing assignment. Very brief ones too, just maybe a couple of paragraphs. Deb likes 6-word stories, and boy, does she do well with those. So come on over for that. Our character trait this month is orderliness. Orderliness is a really interesting one when you're trying to get to know your character better. Like Victoria said, if you're stuck, maybe you don't know your character well enough. Put yourself inside your character and look around your character's room. What does his home look like? If he's a child, what does his room look like? If he has a workplace, what does his workplace environment look like? How are things laid out? Are things chaotic and in a mess, or are they tidy? Are they rigidly tidy? Don't you dare move that pencil 1 inch to the left or the right. It's got to be there. Just taking a look at where your character exists in terms of this one character trait of orderliness will start telling you a lot about what is going on in that character's mind. Because if you think about it, you could say orderly environment, orderly mind. Disorderly environment, chaotic mind. Well, who has a chaotic mind? Very creative people might have a very chaotic mind, because creativity often bubbles up out of chaos. So it's not always a bad thing. But sometimes it's a reflection of not having control in their lives either. This is why sometimes you see people fail in their environment before they fail in other areas of life. So if you want to show that your character has begun to slip into a downhill slide, just show his environment getting more and more messy. Show him losing an important document. These are the kinds of things that can immediately let your reader know that your character is starting to slip. But there's a funny thing about orderliness as well, and that is this strange ability to speak back to your character. When your character gets up his courage, her courage, and gets in there and tackles the chaos in the environment, it often gives the character courage, gives the character a sense that they can do things. It's a very direct way into the character's psyche through the environment. And likewise, you can signal your reader that your character has made a decision, and by golly, he's rounded the corner now, and he's getting ready to act, because you can show him lining things up to take action. And right away, your audience will sense the commitment that that character has made to the task that he's been given at hand. So that's all we'll cover today. Today we're talking about the definition and a little bit about the struggle elements. Next time, we'll talk about the fact that this is also a balance trait, and so there's 2 ways of failure, and we'll talk about victory and lost states. But for today, we're just talking about definition and struggle. So I'm going to invite Victoria. Have you got anything to sum us up?
Oh man, that is so great. Guys, this character trait has just given you the turning point, the shift, or the twist for a very nicely written story. I can think of countless examples of stories where in the beginning, the character is rooted in chaos. There is no orderliness. Everything is out of control. And at some critical point, they make that decision to shift. And it's palpable. You can demonstrate that by showing them straightening up their environment, going shopping and spiffing up what they wear. There's a million ways that you can you can show very visibly this shift in a character so that the reader feels it. Everyone understands what that feels like when you make a shift like that. So lean into this, guys. This one is a huge pivot point should you decide to deploy it in a story. It can be very powerful. So I would say play with it, dive in and dig in, and then come back next week and we'll really get after it.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And in the meantime, remember that also on LiLLiPub.org, we have a whole fusion writing group. And every Saturday we get together and share our writing and talk about how we can improve. We help others in our community improve their writing. And it's just a great deal of fun. So please come on over to LiLLiPub and join the discussion over there. In the meantime, see you next week. Bye-bye.